It's been a birthday.
We in 6 countries. That's
yes.
What I mean. So that's the thing that stands out to me.
Shout out to everybody. Shout out to everybody. We love y'all.
Yes. Thank y'all for listening.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the channel. I'm Coach Deb, representing one half of the Healing Corner podcast. If you're interested in booking a consultation as well as service or a reading, go ahead and check me out at debshealingcornerstone.com.
I'm Coach Yams, owner of Healing is Work Coaching, and I help millennial professional women to live on purpose unapologetically and to help them to stop doing shit out of obligation. If you need help with that, reach out to me, Coach Yams, YAMZ.com. Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning into the Healing Corner podcast. Today's topic is somatization, permanently releasing emotional baggage. And we have a guest with us today to dive into this topic. We have Tonia Winchester. We are so grateful to have her on the show with us. And Tonia has been a naturopathic doctor for 17 years. She now uses contemporary neurological reprogramming techniques to release the painful imprint of the past and allow their bodies and minds to heal. She wrote Breakthrough the Insomnia Cycle, and she's the hostess of Wonder With Me podcast. Hey, Tonia, how you doing?
I am doing great, and I'm excited for our conversation today.
Absolutely. So if you could, just to get things started, could you tell us a bit about yourself, how you got started in this role, this profession that you're in, and how the journey has brought you to where we are today?
Yeah, so I was a really, really sick kid. I had all sorts of ear infections. When I was a baby, I had meningitis. I had mono as a teenager, but they couldn't figure out where I got the mono from. So it was this weird, like, non-contagious mono that I had. I would get these staph infections on my skin. One was around my eye, and I ended up having to go into the hospital, get IV antibiotics in sort of an isolation suite for a week. I was just sick. And the answers, I was covered in eczema, and the answers from the medical doctors then were, more antibiotics, more steroids, more drugs. And there was something within me that was like, I don't know about this. Like, is this really the best way? And I was a kid, but I still was kind of questioning it. And I remember resolving, I was like, I want to be a pediatrician so that I can help kids actually get better so that they can have a ton of fun in their lives. I remember kind of the why behind that at the time. But as I grew and into my teenage years and just more and more weird stuff medically and more disenchanted, I started seeking something else. I wanted to help people in a different way than I had been treated. And actually there was a straw that broke the camel's back moment where I had fallen off a friend's trampoline and did something to my elbow. It was really swollen, really purple, really uncomfortable. And I was in ballet class and I was at the bar and my arm was so swollen that my watch pinged off and flew across the room and landed at my ballet teacher's feet. And you don't mess around in ballet class, by the way. You don't fool around. This is not okay. And teacher comes storming over and she sees my arm. She's like, you need to get to the doctor right away. And I was like, oh. So the next morning we saw my family doctor and we ran x-rays and he's like, you know what? Nothing. It's probably a sprain, but we'll just make sure it's not broken. Check these x-rays. This was back in the day where usually if things were clear, the x-ray tech would just be like, you got the bill of health, you're on your way, and just let you know you're good. But instead, the person came to us with this sealed envelope and said, you have to go back and see your doctor right away. That was not the plan. So we go back to my medical doctors for this follow-up appointment, and he puts his hand out and he says, no, Christine, that's my mom. No, I need to talk to Tonia alone. So my mom is waiting in the waiting room at this doctor's office, and I go in and he whips up the x-ray onto the light box. And he's like, well, we figured out what's wrong with your elbow. I was like, okay, great. Is it broken? And then his next question changed everything for me. He said, are you doing drugs, Tonia? And I was like, excuse me, what? He's like, are you doing drugs? We found in your elbow what seems to be the broken off tip of a needle. Are you doing drugs? And I was just like, oh my God, I just started crying. Like, I was a straight A+ student. I was dancing 2 to 6 hours every day. Like, this guy's known me since I was a baby. Well, like, how can this possibly be coming out of his mouth? And then it was like, we're just trying to help you. Are you doing drugs? And I was like, I just can't, like, no, I'm not. And how dare you? And that moment was the moment that really was just like, I have to find a different way of being kind to people and caring about people and helping people on a journey that's often really scary. You know, health can be a really scary thing when it's not going in the way that we want. So in grade 12, I was introduced to alternative medicine. A nurse came to our school who did healing touch. And I was actually her demonstration her volunteer for her demonstration. So I'm sitting in a chair facing all of my classmates, and she's behind me and doing whatever she's doing. I don't know what she was doing. And she kind of hovers over the shoulder and she's like, oh, what's going on here? And I was like, huh? Like, how did you know? And she says, well, it's just hot. There's a lot of heat coming off this area. There seems to be a lot of energy there. And I wasn't injured, but we'd been doing this really kind of like emo choreography in my modern dance class before. And it was this like repetitive thing. And I was like, I'm just fatigued from that, rehearsal. And that was this moment where I was like, there's something else out there. This woman who knows nothing about me was able to pick up on this thing. Like, what? So I started just getting really excited about all things alternative medicines. While I was in university studying kinesiology and actually minoring in dance, I was on the weekend, I would go to acupuncture workshops or massage workshops or nutrition workshops. And I was just gathering as much information as I could. And naturopathic medicine, becoming a naturopathic doctor, allowed me to do all the things that I was learning about and help people in the way that I really was interested in helping people in, all in the same place. So I graduated from naturopathic college in 2007. I started a practice. I've been through several iterations of practice, but I got to this point in practice a few years back where I was really dissatisfied because I would sit down with the patient, meet them for the first time, take their case history. We'd put together an awesome plan, which they would agree to, and they would leave my office and they'd come back after 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and they would just give me excuse after excuse after excuse about why they couldn't implement, why they couldn't practice the things we talked about. And I was just like, what do you mean eating your broccoli is hard? I just couldn't understand. Like, it's so soft. Like once you cook it properly, like there's no effort to chew it. Like, you're not lifting heavy, you're not sweating. You're like, what do you mean hard? And I became really fascinated with this point in human psychology because I realized it's not the act of doing these things. It's not the act of drinking more water. Like, I just saw Coach Yams drink water perfectly fine. It's so easy to do, right? So it's not the act of these things. It's not the act of getting to bed on time, getting out and moving your body, setting boundaries in relationships, but it's the decision to do that is hard for people. So I became really obsessed with that moment, and I just started looking for ways that I could meet people there. How do I help people change that decision-making process? Enter neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, which is this way of getting to the root cause of why we're not taking care of ourselves, getting the pain out of the past, various traumas, various old emotions that we haven't fully processed, limiting beliefs and decisions, getting them out of our physiology so that our bodies go back into healing mode. And that's what brings us here to this moment right now.
I have a question actually. So, when it comes to like when you build a plan for your clients, kind of like what does that look like? I know everybody has a different one, but do you have like a baseline that you kind of go by and then you kind of work from there? Could you explain that a little bit, what it looks like?
Sure. So if I'm working with a patient and we're working on sort of a really specific health concern, I am going to follow something called the therapeutic order, which is our naturopathic template of health journeys. And the first part of that foundation is to establish the foundations of health. and remove the obstacles to cure. So I'm speaking very generally, so I'll give you some specific examples of what that could be. But to me, what that means is I've languaged this in a different way that makes sense in my brain. Health is this really simple formula of nutrients in and wastes out. So there's 4 or 5 different levels of health: biochemical, physical, energetic, and mental emotional. We need nutrients in on all 4 levels, and we need toxins, wastes out on all 4 levels. So depending on where I kind of get the sense after meeting with someone they're at, I can say, okay, you know what, we really just need to get you some more vitamin D, right? We need to get some more nutrients into you. Or, oh, you've got, mercury poisoning, like we need to get that out. Or maybe you need more time in nature, or maybe you would benefit from some different movement or some movement, a better sleep hygiene routine. Maybe there's an environment at work that isn't conducive to their safety. Those type of physical things need to be addressed. And then next up, energetically, well, what is it within your system that is tending towards disturbance? Is there like a glitch in terms of how your unconscious mind is actually conducting your body? Is there some sort of process that we need to kind of figure out, where it's blocked? And then higher up at that mental emotional level, what positive thoughts and emotions are missing? What toxic thoughts and emotions need to be cleared out? And that's ultimately the question that I'm asking with anyone is, what do they have too much of on any of these levels that they need less of? And what do they not have enough of on any of those 4 levels that they need more of? Nutrify, detoxify. So to answer your question, where do I start? I start where they're at.
Thank you.
Awesome. My question for you is, you speak about the different tools that are available with NLP, or all the things that you've taken in, because you have a lot of practice and experience in this arena. What would you say would be like top 3 holy grails, if you will, of things that could help somebody when they're experiencing some kind of an issue?
Yeah, awesome. So a lot of the people that I work with are stressed, anxious, burnt out, fatigued, they're not sleeping, they're irritable, they're cranky. They're in what I call this burnout cycle, where there's daytime stresses that ramp up in some people to anxiety, and even in others to, panic issues. That disruption in the nervous system impedes their sleep, so they're not getting deep, long, restful sleeps. They're waking up tired. They're close to burning out, or are burnt out, they're fatigued. That lack of energy and vitality is creating the crankiness and the irritability. They're snapping at the people that they love. They're not doing a good job at work. Like, things are starting to kind of unravel. And that experience then decreases their stress threshold even more. So now the cycle just kind of repeats. So a lot of what I do with my clients who are really wanting to work at this mind body healing level is I do work with them as a practitioner to get big emotions and big old painful experiences out of their bodies. But there's often things that I give them to go home and kind of work on. And I can share 3 of those things now so that our viewers and listeners can, get a sense of some really simple tools that are really that are accessible to you at any given time and are really helpful and applicable here. So thing 1 is, when I can actually talk everybody through this right now, and it's good to experience it. So whatever you're doing, if you're driving, don't do this just right now, but if you're in any other format where you're kind of just in a chill environment, this is cool to do. So what you're going to do with your chin level is roll your eyes up, and you're going to find a spot above you to focus on. And when you have your eyes locked on that spot, what I'll invite you to do is bring your hands out beside your ears so you can see your fingers wiggling. So now with your eyes up, you can actually see a big, broad perspective. We call this peripheral vision. So just take a second here to notice, with your eyes locked in that one spot, everything that you can see from top to bottom, right to left. I can see that there's trees outside my window, even though I'm not looking out my window, right? I can see that there's a wedding photo to the side of me that I don't have to directly look at, right? I can see all these things. And then just take a moment to notice what you hear. So maybe there's a fan on your computer, or maybe you can hear your own breathing, my voice, maybe some traffic. And then just pay attention to what you notice against your skin. So the temperature of the air against your skin, your clothing, maybe where you're seated, notice how your body feels in that seat. See if you can notice your pinky toes. And then just notice now that, both of you have just dropped in really nicely, that you're breathing deep into your belly, and you didn't even need to think about doing that. It just happened easily, because when you went into that peripheral vision, you guys can bring your eyes back now. When you went into that peripheral vision, that is directly connected to our calm state of our nervous system. So the parasympathetic state, which is like an on switch. We're either in rest and digest mode, or we're in stress mode. That peripheral vision is immediately going to toggle us back into rest and digest mode. And then we get to have that somatic experience of hearing and feeling. And usually when I'm guiding someone through this and watching, which I wasn't doing with you guys because I was demonstrating, but usually around the time where I start to guide people to hear, I see them go like this. And they just switch. So that's really powerful. That's thing one. It's called peripheral vision. You can use this anytime. You actually can do it when you're driving. Helicopter pilots are in peripheral vision. Surgeons are in peripheral vision. So even though they're doing really focused tasks, they can actually stay in that broad perspective, because they need to be monitoring a lot of stuff all at once. Thing two is, when we are not feeling good about something, when we're having a reaction to something, when we're behaving in a way that maybe we're not proud of, it's because we've made something mean something. We've made somebody's behavior mean something, or something outside of us mean something. We're constantly taking in information through our senses, and it's too much for our minds to actually handle. So what happens is a filtration process. We lose about 2 million bits of data every second that we don't consciously have access to. So it gets filtered out, it gets deleted, it gets distorted, it gets changed, it gets generalized. An example of that is I don't need to learn every time I pick this up what to do with this. I know what this is and I know how to use it. I've generalized this, but that also applies to this one too, right? So we can leverage this. We can leverage this because what it means is, when we've observed something, experienced something, we've taken it in, but our actual experience of that thing is not what reality is. And so what we can know is that we have made something mean something that it doesn't mean. I gave an example earlier as we were chatting about sort of someone leaving the dishes on the counter and me being like, he doesn't love me. How inconsiderate, that jerk. It's like, well, maybe he got called away. Maybe there was something urgent that happened that he had to go deal with. I mean, I don't know. I'm jumping to the island of conclusion and making it mean something about me that is not true. It's not about my lovability or my worth or my deservingness. It is just something I've made up, right? So how else can I see this? How else can I look at this? What else can I make this mean? And I'll challenge my clients to come up with seven different interpretations when they're reacting to something. What are 7 other ways you can see this? You know what? Frankly, 3 is hard. 5 is really hard. And by the time you get to 7, I find most people have done this rotation internally where now they're just curious. They're compassionate. They're coming from a place of I want to give this person the benefit of the doubt. Maybe something's really up for them. And so it's this really nice internal healing process, to be honest, where we can actually pause and redefine what we have interpreted from other people's behaviors. That's number 2. So just putting a different story on it, getting curious and putting a different story on it. And I have another example of that, but it's a bit of a longer story. So maybe we have time later, I'll circle back. But the third one is when we are making up these stories, something changes inside of us where we get what's called an internal representation. So if I were to suggest to our listeners right now and our viewers that they think of something kind of like minorly irritating, nothing big, significant, but like 1, 2 out of 10 in terms of like emotional intensity, just like a kind of thing. And when you bring that to mind, there's going to be something that happens inside your mind. So there's going to be some sort of picture. There could be a sound connected to it, a feeling. And that's what we call the internal representation. Actually, why don't we do this as an example? So you've got your internal representation. So you've got the thing that's minorly irritating and you've got a picture of that in your mind. What I'm going to invite you to do now is take that image and see what happens when you push it away from yourself. So if you have a window around you, maybe push it on the other side of the glass, or imagine that you could push it to the other side of the glass. And notice already that it becomes harder to see and it becomes harder to make out the details and maybe even harder to hear if there were sounds connected. Push it further away. So push the image further and further away so that maybe now it's the size of a postage stamp. And it's really hard to make out the image now. It's blurry. Maybe it's kind of a bit distorted. And keep pushing it away until it's just the size of a period, sort of a dot at the end of a sentence. And just now notice, really try to find that old feeling of irritation. Just try to find that in your body. And most likely because we've changed the details of that image, we are going to change the feeling associated with it too. So these are the types of things that we can do. We can change how we neurologically think about something so that it doesn't trigger an emotional response anymore. So that's number 3.
Thank you for that. Go ahead, Deb, because I know you got a question.
Well, I like how she broke it down into 3 to start off with. And that first one remind me of when I go outside, like meditation, because I guess when I was younger, I was meditating. I didn't know I was meditating. I didn't know that's what that was, because I would kind of get stressed out. And the way that our house was built when I was growing up, I lived in it was a 2-story, but it was an older house. So the rooms were really big and we had like tri-level roofs, kind of like. So there was one portion of our roof that I could get out of the window and like actually walk onto the roof. And I would sit there and I would do this, what you just said, like my eyes would look up into like the sky and I would just focus on that. And it was like a peace, almost like I could feel my body. I could feel like all those different parts of me. And then when I got back in the house, I felt so much more better. And then I loved the fresh air, like just breathing it in. It felt so amazing. So that's interesting that you said that's one of the techniques that you do. And then the second one, what you were saying, it kind of reminds me of like the perspective of how you even see things. Like when I do readings, for example, a lot of times I see people not seeing the perspective of the other person. They're just like looking at their perspective only, and then this narrow in the perspective that they're even looking at. So for when you talk about how you're, look at it in a different way, that also does help you to, do the healing. So I like, I don't want to talk about the third one, but I just wanted to talk about those 2.
And I would just add to Deb's sentiments about the peripheral exercise as well. I felt very calm after we ran through it, just sitting here. And I think I take for granted how peaceful it can be to just zoom out and allow yourself to just be in a space without attaching to anything. But I do have a question to expand on this. Like, so I know that, if things get a little crazy and you need something to bring yourself back, these are great tools for that. And it might not be an answer or just one answer. It may just depend person by person or circumstance by circumstance. But if you are actively in a pattern that you recognize has been a pattern that you've been in, and I can speak for me. Sometimes when I'm in this space and I recognize that there's something that I'm needing to work through, I'm frustrated by the fact that I haven't made it to where I'm trying to get to. I'm doing the things where I'm trying to change the narrative of it, and not make things personal, not take things personal. But then, external factors happen because you can only control you and how you show up. And so for those external factors to keep feeling like you're being just, dumped on while trying to psychological and neurological your way out of this. Do you have any tips? Because there is a particular pattern. I won't go into specific detail, but there is a pattern in which there is a space in which I'm required to show up in, and then there is an identical energy in a person that wants access to me. Feels very the same. I know it's a pattern that I am having to learn to overcome. I'm trying to positive my way out of it, feel my way through it and all the things, but I still feel stuck. Like there's something I'm not quite, a switch that's not quite flipping.
I love this. Okay, I wrote down 3 notes that I want to hit on this. First of all, one of the things I grabbed out of what you said is that it's really important that we recognize wherever we're at right now is perfect for what has come before and the decisions that we have made before this moment. And when we can really understand that, it makes healing and change so much more quick and effective because we're not saying that we're wrong. We're not trying to overcome our own sort of self-critic. Like, I'm here in this moment because of what I decided up until this point. And these things are not happening consciously. Like, you're not waking up every day being like, today's the day I'm going to just be in that same pattern in like 3 different spots in my life. Like, good job, me. Let's do it. Let's really go for it today. No, like these things are happening under the surface. They are automated though. And you're right that, you can have a mirror of the same kind of pattern in different areas of your life. But when we really recognize that right here, right now, I'm exactly perfect based on what's happened up until this point, that's when we can actually seek a new state of perfection that is different. So that's one thing. It's this real just 100% acceptance of right here, right now. I brought myself to this point. Okay, cool. Yeah, here I am, and I can move forward. Next, when I'm working with clients and they come to me with problem behaviors, that's really what we're needing to change for folks. They'll be like, oh, I'm anxious. Well, that's fine. How is that a problem for you? How do you behave when you're anxious? Well, I overeat. I lash out at the people I love. I drink. Whatever it is, like it's the behavior that they actually want to change. And so what we do is we elicit what's called a strategy. And a strategy is when we go from trigger, whether it's a visual, auditory, or kinesthetic external thing, to internal dialogue, to internal thought, to internal feeling, to behavior. That's the progression. There'll be some sort of external trigger, internal thought or feeling, internal thought, internal feeling, and then the thing. That's the problem. And the way we do anything is the way we do everything. So yes, these patterns are going to show up in our lives in different places. And when I'm working with clients, I'm going to get them to we're going to figure out the strategy. So maybe it's like man in the red hat, terror, or man in the red hat. Oh God, I'm in danger, feeling of terror, and then like running away. That's just as an example. Okay. That's the strategy. And we'll elicit that strategy for 2 or 3 other places in their life where they might flee a scene, a scenario. So now we've got this cool kind of like dictionary of 4 different types of triggers that all lead to the same behavior. So there's going to be a common thread neurologically with all those things. The trigger might be different. The thought might be different. The feeling might even be different, but the behavior is the same. So I asked the crucial question, for these triggers to cause this behavior, what would you have to believe about yourself such that when faced with these triggers, you automate this behavior? And they'll just immediately be something like, I'm not good enough. So now we've got this root cause limiting decision that we can clear really easily with something called timeline therapy. So tools are important in the moment to reduce our reactivity, to give us a little bit more space to make a different choice. But when we actually, sorry, I keep hitting my mic there. When we go into, the basement and really kind of clear out this old library of dusty old ways of thinking about things, that's when we get really long-term sustainable change happening.
Thank you for that.
Okay, I agree with what you're saying. I think that this is an amazing thing. I hope that y'all are getting something from it. Everybody that's watching our podcast for today. But I don't know. Do you have anything else, Yams, that you wanted to say?
I don't, because we are at the 30-minute mark. This has been great. I think that it's very helpful when people are aware that there are tools outside of what modern medicine can provide to us, because a pill is not the remedy to everything. And so thank you so much, Dr. Tonia, for showing up and showing out with the knowledge that you have. We thank you.
Yeah, you're so welcome. Thank you for having me.
Deb, you got anything to close us out?
No, that's it. That's all I had. I do thank you, doctor, for showing up for us and giving us this information. Y'all make sure you check out her website too, because she does have a website. It will be in the description box if you need to get some more assistance.
Yes. Oh. Well, we will see y'all the next time.